You may have heard that size doesn't always matter, and it's how you use something that creates a difference. This is very applicable in the world of audio because you may see two headphones listed with 45mm and 40mm drivers, and you may think that 45mm driver headphone is going to be better, but that is not how it works, and that is why I rarely mention the driver size in my reviews. Some of the best headphones in the world have 40mm drivers, while you can easily find 45mm or even 50mm drivers in entry-level headphones, and the size even doesn't affect the bass response. It is the same case with IEMs, where 6mm or 10mm driver doesn't really matter, but when it comes to speakers, then the driver size does matter, and 8-inch drivers can generally produce lower bass than 5-inch drivers. Similarly, just because there is a higher wattage in a system doesn't mean that it is going to sound louder. When you are comparing products from the same brand and in the same category, it can give you some idea. But for example, this soundbar is the same wattage as my professional studio monitors, and the studio monitors are definitely louder with much more clarity at higher volumes. The wattage figure is just how much power the speaker driver can handle, but loudness also depends on other factors like the type of drivers and the sensitivity of the driver. So wattage is not a measure of loudness, and there are other more important factors like how clear the speaker is at higher volumes. If you can get the sound pressure level value mentioned on the website, that is going to be a much more accurate measure for loudness, but this information is generally not available for consumer level speakers. You may also make your decision of buying a speaker just based on how low it can get according to the specifications on the website, but a lot of times the speaker will not be able to produce an audible level of the frequency level listed on the website. Sometimes these brands will even list a figure that is completely incorrect. If you are buying studio monitors from brands like Adam or JBL, then you may get a more accurate figure in the spec sheet, but you should really not focus too much on the number listed on the website. Even if a speaker system can produce 20 Hz, there are more important things like how tight the bass is and how even the frequency response is. So try to check out the reviews or frequency response graph and you may get a much better answer. Another myth that is a bit in the gray area is that wireless audio sucks. Newer devices that can transmit signals in lossless quality are already here, and for most practical purposes, I don't think that wireless audio will become a bottleneck for most people. The compatibility of aptX lossless is kind of limited, but LDAC is a much more widely available codec, and that is also near lossless, so there is no need to feel obsessive about wired audio. I often make jokes about high-res stickers, and they are for good reasons. It does mean that a product meets certain technical specifications, but the biggest problem here is that the brands have to pay to get this sticker, so many brands just don't bother with it. I have seen the cheapest Chinese brands use high-res stickers, while most of the German brands just don't bother with it. These are some of the highest end products in the world with extreme resolving abilities, and yet they don't come with this sticker. Now, just because a device has it doesn't mean that it is a bad thing, but not having this sticker also doesn't mean that a device is less capable. Let's talk about cables now, and the only thing that I will say is that bad quality cables can ruin your audio, but once you get something decent enough, there isn't a lot of room for improvement, if any. I paid 13,000 rupees for this headphone cable and I feel really stupid about it because I could have got something like this made for under 3,000 rupees. Do give this video a thumbs up if you're liking it so far. Then let's shift our attention to IEMs. And a lot of people think that if an earphone has more drivers, it is going to be better, but adding drivers to an earphone is a risky endeavor because if you don't tune them well, it is going to sound worse than a single driver earphone. Now, most of the good audio brands actually manage to do a great job with these earphones, but single driver dynamic earphones often offer a realism in their sound that these multi-driver earphones may not match. That is why single driver earphones also have a fan following even if there are multi-driver models with more details at the same price. So don't choose one earphone over another just because one has more number of drivers. Audio myth number 8 is that Logitech Z series speakers sound great for their price. I won't recommend any expensive speaker that doesn't have tweeters because you just don't get a proper high frequency extension without it, so the clarity of sound suffers in big ways. Logitech pairs these mediocre sounding satellites with a very big subwoofer, which makes people think that it will sound amazing, but there are much better and clearer sounding options from brands like Edifier and Swans in the same price range. And you can always manually add a subwoofer to bookshelf speakers later on. If you want to buy something from Logitech, then I can really recommend their MX Master 3 mouse. Myth number 9 is that this or this EQ setting will make your music sound better. There is no universal equalizer setting that will make everything sound better on your earphones or speakers. EQ is used to correct the problems in frequency response of specific models of headphones, so the setting for something like the M50X won't make a Sennheiser headphone sound better. There are websites that have specific EQ settings for different models of headphones, and this can actually make most headphones sound much more balanced. I also use EQ for room correction for my speakers, and you can also use it manually if you feel like the bass or treble on your headphone is too overpowering. Many of you ask me why I don't have sound tests for speakers and earphones, and the answer is that sound tests tell you nothing about the quality of a speaker. For example, these Adam speakers have special air motion transformer tweeters, and you just can't get the kind of sound that they produce from other kinds of tweeters. The sound is also going to totally change because of the room acoustics, the frequency response of the recording mic, and the frequency response of your speakers or headphones, and this is also going to transmit over low quality on YouTube, so there is no point of having audio tests. I do upload sound tests for Bluetooth speakers because most people generally have audio gear that is better than Bluetooth speakers, and in those cases you can somewhat get an idea of the sound, especially when there is another reference point placed in the same condition. Finally, let's talk about balanced audio, and a balanced signal chain is nice to have, but the overall design of your amp or DAC is much more important than that. Professional studio monitors used balanced inputs because at long cable lengths, a balanced connection provides noise cancellation, but for your headphones, this benefit is not applicable. The only benefit that you may get on a headphone is that you may get more power, which can improve audio, and you may also get better quality because the amp that you are using has a better circuitry on its balanced connection. But just because a low-end amp has balanced output doesn't mean that it is going to be better than a higher-end amp that doesn't have a balanced out. There are many other myths that are prevalent in the world of audio, so let me know if you know any of them. Some topics are really serious and too sensitive for audiophiles, so I will try to make detailed videos on them separately. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.